of Dark Souls 2. Time to get a bunch of hate mail. I've beaten all 4 of the Souls games over the course of my life, and while I love most of them, you get the fuck out of here! I've gone on record with my friends saying that 2 is not only my favorite, but I genuinely believe that it is the best one. Dark Souls 2 had really big shoes to follow. Dark Souls 1 really threw a cog into the AAA gaming space. The first game of the series had such an impact on pop culture in gaming that there is a new genre of game design named after it. Even though it's just a slightly variated version of a Metroidvania, but it's okay, we'll let that go. And to be honest, even if you aren't a Dark Souls 2 fan, I think in retrospect you kinda sort of have to feel bad for the team that had to make it. You are a developer at From Software. Your company releases Dark Souls to critical acclaim, and your studio demands that a sequel's made. Your team is assembled, and you find out the dude that directed the first game, which remember, critical acclaim, is yeeting out to work on a completely different game on the next-gen consoles, and 2 guys that take over say, hey yo, we're gonna make a brand new engine from scratch for this game, and it's gonna be a biome-sprawling adventure game that brings you across the globe. So you buckle down and you make a good engine, and then halfway through development your game is broken, buggy, and basically unplayable. And then after mass panic, this guy is removed as director, and the one remaining dude just has to make it playable. Which means a lot of characters and world design that had been finalized all of a sudden have to be reworked, and then your engine has to be powered down. And then the game comes out and people make 36-hour-long videos telling you that your game sucks and how it's basically the worst game ever made. Okay, can we start with something that I think is fair to say? Dark Souls 2 has the best art direction of the whole series. Heidi's Tower of Flame specifically stands out as some of the best looking areas in the franchise. But apart from that, each area feels and looks distinct from each other. The original intent for Dark Souls 2 was to make a world-spanning game with unique biomes and whatnot, and the graphics and art direction really give off this vibe. Even though you can see most of the areas that you will be going from Majula, it really does feel like you're globetrotting. The haunted shaded woods, the bright red lava-infused castle of the Iron Peak, the beautiful and serene Majula, the haunting pitch-black darkness of the gutter, and even the oddly pretty, yet disgusting green of the gulch. Even the things betwixt is distinct and pretty to look at. I would say that DS1 is nearly, if not equally, as visually diverse as 2, but the engine is just so much prettier to look at that if you ask me, there is simply no question. Dark Souls 3 obviously has better graphics, but the color palette of 3 is beige, gray, some blue, more gray, black, more beige, throw in some red for fire. One thing I think Dark Souls 3 does better graphically than any of the other ones though, however, is that it really does convey how shit the world has become. The engine that runs Dark Souls 2 I think holds up pretty well, to be honest. Granted, yes, there is a mod being developed that overhauls the lighting, which makes it look even better, or more along the lines at least of what the developers were hoping to get accomplished, which is a huge emphasis on dark and light. While areas do get dark in the game, there was never really a need to use the torch to see. But when a torch is used, I don't think it's really any question to say that the lighting effects and the shadow effects still look pretty good. But I'm sure some people will be upset that I'm even defending something like this, but I just want you to be on a positive note and say, yeah, that part of Dark Souls 2 was pretty nice. Alright, now let's get to the part where people start sending death threats to me over. The combat in Dark Souls 2 is slow and clunky. Dark Souls 2 is the worst combat. Dark Souls 2 had sex with me and never called me back. I love Dark Souls 2's combat. The combat that the Souls series has always presented up to the point of DS2's release is that it is very methodical, very back and forth. The Souls series, specifically the first 3 games, don't forget Demon Souls, all had very heavy combat. Demon Souls being the first blind step into the Souls-type genre, it is understandable that the combat is a bit finicky, which I believe that it is, but that doesn't stop the combat from being smooth and fun. Dark Souls refined the combat from Demon Souls. The combat from Dark Souls 1 is heavier, thunkier, and chunkier. I think a slow, methodical type of combat works very much in the Souls game's favor. Hey, you like Dark Souls combat? Well, do you want to blame me? No, I don't. But why? Miyazaki came back for me. I'm a return to form from the series. Have you even played another Souls game? You're just Bloodborne with the Dark Souls skin draped over your face. You're not fun. I don't like you. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure why people don't like DS2's combat. It's slower than 1, yes, but the slow, heavier combat I think only does wonders for the gameplay loop. Even when you are ambushed by multiple enemies, which yes, does happen quite a bit in this one, I think that the slower combat still works in favor for the player. Everyone is slower. You are faster and swing harder than most common enemies. There aren't enemies that swing much faster than you, and if they do, they have a huge wind-up animation that is pretty easy to telegraph. One example I can think of are the spear enemies from early on in the game that do multiple quick swings that can take out quite a bit of your health, especially in the early game. But look at this wind-up animation. The slower combat allows for a much more thought-intensive reaction to this. You see the wind-up animation, you back up and roll away, and wait for the attack to finish, and then you come in and cleave the motherfucker in twain. In fact, I think the slower, more methodical combat makes the game much more manageable. In Dark Souls 3 especially, you are constantly on edge and dodge rolling until the 50 attacks that the basic enemy of the game is swinging with, and then you attack. It doesn't feel anything like the first 3 games that came before it. There are so many times in Dark Souls where I think the slightly quicker pace of the combat leads to much more deaths when the game does throw a mob of enemies at you. The Undead Parish and New Londo are places that come to mind specifically from Dark Souls. And I can name 100 in Dark Souls 3, but we won't talk about that right now. The flow of 2's combat feels natural. It feels like a duel. It feels like a refined version of what came before it. Look, I don't have a problem with the bosses in DS2. A complaint I see a lot is that the bosses are too many dudes with swords, and that they wish that there were more weird bosses like the first 2 games had. I think the bosses work well with the more dueling nature that the combat loop presents. And for the record, there are quite a few weird bosses, or ones that aren't just a dude with a sword. Here they all are now. I actually have to commend the developers because for all the dudes with sword bosses, none of them feel recycled or rehashed, except, yes, the redo of the Smelter Demon and the Dragon Riders. But the Dragon Slayer feels completely different than the Looking Glass Knight, who feels completely different than the Pursuer, feels completely different than the Flexile Sentry, feels completely different from the Lost Sinner, completely feels different than the Ruin Sentinels, feels completely different from the Rom, feels completely different from Vestat. Do you see my point? They're all dudes with swords, but that doesn't, and shouldn't, really bother me because they're all special in their own little ways. Okay, let's start talking about something that I don't think DS2 did better than Dark Souls 1. And no, I'm not talking about the levels not being interconnected correctly, but maybe that would have been better in the long run. I do really wish that they had kept the warp ability gated off until later in the game. One of the best things about 1 is the Metroidvania exploration and how well that game cements the world in your head. Much like the early style Resident Evil games, I'm sure by the time that you beat DS1, you can map out or at the very least imagine all of the routes that you could take to get from one area to the other in your head. You feel like you are conquering the world as you progress through it. DS2 unfortunately does not have the same sense of world building that 1 did, but in the end, I think the individual levels still shine out pretty brightly. I will concede that the lack of real interconnectivity is a downgrade from DS1, but I have never personally found this to be an issue. As I said previously, the levels all feel well designed and intricate, but there is one thing that I think holds back the individual levels, and that is the sheer amount of bonfires in some of the areas. Take the Shaded Woods for instance. Bonfire in Majula. You walk up to a building just outside the edge of Majula. You open a door. You fight some things. Bonfire. You leave that building, you walk down a pathway, you fight some things, bonfire. The decision to have a bonfire in the building in between Majula and the Forked Road is honestly baffling to me. You do not need one there, especially since you can warp right from the get-go. And yes, this is just one area, in one instance of a handful, so maybe
Hey! I brought back interconnected levels! Do you want to play me?
Yeah, your levels are interconnected, but you have more bonfires in just one area of the game than the entirety of pre-Anor Londo in DS1, which sort of renders the interconnectivity pointless, you know?
But the level design is good, right?
There isn't a single good level in your entire campaign. No one area is fun to play through. The opening level? Shit. Swamp? Super shit. Cathedral? Miserable shit. Catacombs? Awful shit. Prison? Literally pain, and it never gets any better. The dark race in the swamp? Fuck that. The big ass crab? Actual cancer. The guy who jumps on your shoulders and unscrews your head? Maybe the worst enemy in the series, and that's one fucking zone. The level design is so shit, and I can't fathom why people give your fetish for bombarding you with hordes of enemies a pass, but in Dark Souls 2, people use that as a reason to hate the game. The level's not really meshing together organically, adds this really strange, dreamlike sort of vibe that resides in DS2's soul. The game starts with you plummeting down a strange vortex, which makes the game feel like it all could be a pre-mortem dream state, which, for the record, isn't what I think is actually happening, but it does make Drang Lake feel otherworldly. The huge spires leading up to the Dragon Eyrie and the truly breathtaking views that reside within the Dragon Shrine, in particular, feel out of this world and really feel like endgame areas. Like, for real, the Dragon Shrine is fucking immaculate. How could you not say that this looks incredible? As far as individual level design goes, I think it goes to show how good I feel about it when I say that there are only about 2 areas of the game that I don't look forward to playing whenever I do play through the game. I'll start by going over these 2 first. The Gulch and the Shrine of Amana. The Gulch is just, bad. Really not fun. It's a narrow pathway that's dark as fuck and loaded with statues that shoot poison at you to the point where if you don't stock up on poison resist, you're gonna have a bad time. And there are enemies that will halt you in your tracks and force you to dodge them and the poison snotballs. Every playthrough I dread going through here, but to an almost comical extent, I can't really be that mad at it because it's so short. If you run through it, you can get through the entire section of the Gulch in about 30 seconds. It leads directly to the Rotten boss, and there's even a hidden bonfire directly in front of the boss Fog Gate, which means that even if you do struggle through getting here or find yourself dying to the boss, you can guarantee yourself a redo with a spawn directly in front of it. The other main area that I dread venturing through is the Shrine of Amana. It's a water level that you often find yourself being shot at by many long-range enemies, which wouldn't be so bad if you weren't checking to see if you were going to fall off the many drop-off spots that lead to an immediate death that are somewhat tricky to see due to the water you're treading through. The big ring area that follows the second bonfire especially really used to halt my progress until I found a better way to manage it. But that's the thing. The more I play through the game, the easier this area gets for me, to the point where on this last playthrough, I wasn't even worried about it. It is hard, yes, don't get me wrong. The lead up to the second bonfire still gives me trouble, and the boss is easier than the entire level itself. But I can't say I didn't find enjoyment getting through it this time. And hey, look, I'm not a game designer, but overall I would say the individual level design is pretty consistently good. The early areas especially are very well designed as to gradually build you up as the level progresses so that each victory feels earned. No Man's Wharf is the first truly difficult area of the game, and it utilizes the Dark Souls staple level shortcut very well. The bridge that connects the boss area and the last bonfire at the start of the level means that each run-through of the level leading up to you dropping the bridge is very tense and feels very soulsy. The emphasis on light is also used incredibly well here, with you given the choice to torch up all of the urns and make visibility much more manageable. While this level is pretty difficult, I look forward to it every single time. Another level that I think is very well done is the aforementioned Heidi's Tower of Flame. While it's not the best designed level, I can't deny looking forward to climbing up those steps and seeing that tower come into focus every single playthrough. The high walkways provide a similar sort of tense feeling that the Shrine of Amana does, but much better done, since you aren't constantly looking down to see where you could be plummeting towards your death. Staring off into the distant monoliths of a destroyed kingdom drenched in ocean water makes me imagine more than any area of the franchise of a kingdom in its prime. Among the highlights of areas that I would say are some of my favorites are Aldea's Keep, the Lost Bastille, Forest of Fallen Giants, Dragon Shrine, and the Drang Lake Castle are among some of my personal favorites. Alright, this part's going to be pretty short, but can I get something out of the way? Please? Adaptability isn't as bad as people say. First of all, you don't have to level it up. Look here. Heavy rolls in DS1 were 9 iframes, which equates to about 88 agility. Medium rolls were 11, which equates to around 96 agility. Fast rolls were 13, which equates to about 105 agility. In Dark Souls 2, most characters start with a base of 8 iframes. Which means, at the beginning of the game, more or less you're basically heavy rolling, which is a completely viable way to play the game. Here's something I feel like a lot of people don't talk about when complaining about adaptability. Because it's a stat, you can make it better than DS1's iframes. And if you're complaining about having to put stats into something that should be from the get-go, don't forget that putting stuff into that stat means you're also increasing resist, you're also increasing your poise, and you're making your iframes better. It's a complaint that I hear a lot that I feel like isn't really truly valid. And because adaptability does affect poise, it still makes a fair amount of difference. You can reasonably feel like a tank if you wanted, or something more nimble. A lot of this did actually come down to poise. Different stamina functionality and weapon stats that actually fill desirable niches. Not only this, but pretty much every weapon could be infused, which even adds more customization. There were so many more spells, so many more weapons, so much more of everything else in Dark Souls 2. There's always an option to fit your playstyle, and I feel like Dark Souls 3 was an actual downgrade from this. Whew. Yeah, in summary, I love Dark Souls 2. I can't help it. I hope that I was able to maybe put something into perspective for you, in case you weren't really a big fan of it. And if you are a big fan of Dark Souls 2, it's nice to just hear some positivity around the game every once in a while. And yes, I know there's a bunch of videos already praising the game, and this is just another one. But sometimes I just feel like... Huh? What's that? Who did? Mahler? He made a 9-hour-long video about how Dark Souls 2 is shit? Oh, fuck. Well, what did he say? Oh, the worlds aren't interconnected? I guess it's the worst game ever made. That one part where you have to walk around some rubbish to progress in the game? Worst game ever made. Oh, the combat's a little bit too slow? Worst game ever made. Ooh, bosses are too many dudes with swords? Worst game ever made. Oh, that's right, they made iframes a stat? Worst game ever made. Man, I guess I was wrong. Okay, for real though, actually, that's the end of the video. I genuinely need to thank you if you stuck around this long. This video took me borderline 10 days to finish, and it was an undertaking, and I knew it was going to be an undertaking when I started writing the script for it, and I stuck with it. It was a good time. I thought my computer broke at one point while making it, but holy fuck. I have a bunch of people to thank. Let me pull up my project notes. I have NooB to thank for some footage. These are all for footage. NooB, Fightin' Cowboy, Game Zone, DS2, or Zvuk Nickses, Crisp 44s, NooB again, the Mirel, Orion, Boss Fight Database, More Fightin' Cowboy, Video Game Storytime. She specifically helped me with the intro and the history. Ultimate for the crab footage, Redafts for the music, for the boss montage, and Fate for the little short bit of the Black Gulch, and Blue Lizard Jello for the footage of the Drangley Castle. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much. Hopefully the next video won't take me as long. I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'll think of something. I'm going to go play a board game.
Tomato is a fruit, but it's also a vegetable.